But today I've decided I'm going to pot up this Autopot system, which is my present for my wife for Christmas. Been sat in my front room all this time, so I think she'll be glad to get it out of the front room. Hello and welcome, by the way. We're down on my home garden. Hope you are well and had a great week. Now, while I'm going to put this together, why don't you find out what I've been up to over this last week? Now, this morning I've just started getting these aubergine plants into a bit of a bigger pots. I've had them grown in these sort of plug trainers to start them off, which they've done okay. And when I looked at them, there were roots coming out the bottom. But I've already potted a few up in order to try and get ahead. But they've not, the roots aren't quite as solid within the root, within the pots these as I'd hoped. So they're not, they could do with a little bit longer inside these plug plant starters than what I'm doing. I thought I would use these plug plant starters with a lot of these plants. These seeds were actually sown in January, and I thought I would just try and save as much space as possible by using some of these plug plant starters, which is saying, you know, it will work. It does work. I just wanted to get these potted up into something a little bit bigger, whereas I think if these were a little bit more rooted, they would be better than what I'm getting at the moment. Don't get me wrong, these aubergine plants are still doing well. You know, they're not got a problem or anything. I was just expecting the whole plug plant to come out with all the roots. I mean, we have got quite a few roots on the bottom of these. They're doing okay, just not as good as I was hoping, and it's probably because I'm just being a little bit too trying to move forward, trying to get things going a little bit quicker, a little bit earlier than I would like. Never mind, they will continue to grow. We're just putting these into pots. These are 3.5 inch pots, which we've added multi-purpose compost and a bit of perlite. So they will continue to grow. They will take up room in these pots, at which point we can then look at getting them out and planted when they are a little bit bigger. Time will tell, but it so far seems like we're off to a relatively good start nonetheless. In fact, here we go. That one did come out whole, so we were almost there, just not quite there with all of them. Well, let me just close that greenhouse door. Today I've actually received a package in the post, and this actually comes from my good friend Steve from the Digwell Green Fingers YouTube channel. Steve, every year for as long as I can remember, he has run a bit of competition. You get a single seed potato just like this, and the competition is to see how many potatoes, or who can grow the most amount of potatoes out of one single seed potato. So I've got mine. It started here. I'm not going to be talking much about this because we're going to reveal how well we do towards the end of a season, but we've got one here, and I am going to start off by getting this off to a chit. Now I'm going to try and keep it in this packaging that Digwell sent with it, so that I know which one is the seed potato for that. I'll just pop that up there and leave it to chit. Well, I'm sure by now you know that we are running an experiment this year where we've got AI to come up with a seed sowing list of seeds that we can sow every week that we should be able to provide us with food as we grow along. And last week we were sowing pumpkins, and I was sort of said then it felt a little bit too early to be doing pumpkins for me. Normally that would be something we sow much later on. Well, this week one of the seeds that is suggested, I of course had a list of all the others, but this week something that it suggested is courgettes, and this is really very, very early for my liking. Normally I'll probably be thinking April before I sow courgettes, but you know, this is part of the experiment. We're trying to see if AI is going to be accurate, or whether our own bias, shall we say, our own experiences tells us much better of what we can be doing. Now, the pumpkins that we sowed last week are actually doing quite well, and these courgettes, we're just doing them pretty much in the same way. We're just taking the seed and sliding it into the compost, and that hopefully will give us plenty of courgettes. We've certainly got plenty of pumpkins. You know, I don't know what we're going to be doing with all these, but the whole point is that we're experimenting and seeing how we get on. Well, there we go. We have got my Autopot 4-pot system in place. These are 4 15-litre pots, so pretty good for tomatoes and cucumbers like I'm planning to use, with their own watering system. Now, setting it up was pretty easy actually. What I've done is I'm actually running this off a water vat instead of a supplied water container, just because I'm going to be doing something a little bit different. I originally had a adapter that didn't come as part of the kit, but you can buy separately, that I attached onto my water butt, and then I just ran the rubber hose all the way down to the far end where I've attached a drain valve, just so when we need to empty the system we can simply open the valve and drain all the water out. Now, when it comes to assembling the 4-pot system, fairly easy. First of all, we take a rubber bung and put that through the hole in the side where the water chamber goes. We then take a piece of rubber hosing and cut that to size, depending on how long you're going to want it, and we attach that onto the valve. Now, the valve is the heart of this system. It opens and closes to allow as much water needed as and when it is required, and it is quite an innovative thing, because there's no electrics, no need to wire up water or anything like that to here. It is all done by gravity, so it's a pretty ingenious bit of kit. We then take that hose and feed it through that rubber bung. Now, top tip when it comes to working with rubber hose, this is my own top tip, I find that if we warm up the rubber hose in some hot water, it makes it easier to attach to all the pieces, and when it cools down it makes a tighter seal as well. It doesn't take long in hot water, 30 seconds is all it needs, but the rubber just becomes so much more malleable and easier to install that it's worth doing. We'll then take that rubber hose up to the main piece of rubber that we put in right at the beginning. We cut into a T-piece in that and attach that all together, and then we repeat that with all of the other containers, and then we put this piece of sheet in the bottom of the pot, which just stops the roots from going into the container, and then we place the pot in and another piece of weed membrane, again just stopping the roots from going into the water. These containers we will fill up with a mix of compost and perlite in order to get the plants operational, and once we obviously plant out our plants as well, it will be good to go. Into the water butt, of course, we add water, and it also comes, I've got a bowl just here, their own plant food that we also add to the water butt. So basically, when the system is up and running, it's kind of a case that we don't have to think about watering, we don't have to think about doing much with it. It's operational and off it goes. There we go. This is the plant food that comes with it, and you don't have to worry about feeding or anything like that. It does make life rather easy. I trialled these last year, I was really impressed, and that's why we've expanded on the system and using it a bit more this year. We'll keep us posted on how well it turns out throughout 2025. Right guys, I'm gonna love you and leave you. I'll see you again in the next one. Until then, please take care.